There's a version of Las Vegas that lives in all of our heads. It's an American myth. It's the smell of stale cigarette smoke, cheap perfume, and boundless optimism. It's the sound, a symphony of slot machine bells, the riffle of a deck of cards, and the distant laughter from some party in the back. It was the promise of a second chance, illuminated in neon. A place where the normal rules of life didn't apply. A place where a little bit of luck and a $20 bill could make a bus driver from Cleveland feel like a king for the weekend. But if you've been there lately, you know the feeling. That sense that something is just off. That sting of disappointment at the checkout counter. The mental math you have to do before ordering a drink. The feeling that you're not a guest, you're a line item on a spreadsheet. The magic trick is gone. Now you can see all the wires. So, what happened? How did the Great American Escape become just another luxury brand? And what happens? This city grow, and then change. They all talk about that promise, and it often starts with a single $20 bill. A guy I know, Sal, a retired union pipefitter from Chicago, told me about his first trip in '88. He said he crossed the desert in a beat-up Ford, and when he saw the skyline rise out of the heat haze, it felt like he'd found a secret kingdom built just for guys like him. He walked into the Stardust with $100 to his name, cash he'd saved for 6 months. He broke one of those hundreds, got 5 20s back, and put one in his pocket. And that single 20, it felt infinite. You see, that 20 wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a key. It unlocked a world. It bought him a steak dinner, a real one, with a baked potato and green beans for $4.99. It bought him a couple of beers while he sat at a $5 blackjack table for 2 hours, laughing with a dealer who called him Chicago and a cocktail waitress who never let his glass get empty. He'd tip her $1. She'd thank him like he'd given her 100. The 20 turned into chips. The chips went up. They went down. The house had the edge, sure. Everyone knew that. But it felt playful. It didn't feel predatory. The goal wasn't to bleed you dry in 15 minutes. The goal was to keep you there, keep you happy, keep you entertained. The gambling was almost the background music to the main event, which was the experience of being treated like you mattered. That was the genius of the old Vegas. It was a cathedral of second chances built for the American working class. It didn't care about your pedigree. It didn't ask for your credit score. It just asked you to come as you are, bring what you could, and take a shot. The 99-cent shrimp cocktail wasn't just cheap food. It was a welcome mat. The free parking wasn't a perk. It was a handshake. It was a city saying, "We know you worked hard for your money. Come on in. Let us take care of you for a while. Let your hair down. You could be a plumber from Ohio or a teacher from California, and for one weekend, you could sit next to a high roller and feel like you both belonged there." It was the great American equalizer, lubricated with cheap booze and possibility. The house always wins, we knew the saying. But back then, the house seemed content to just win a little, to let you win some too, and to make sure you had one hell of a story to tell when you went back home. It was a business model built on loyalty, on the simple human idea that if you treat people right, they'll come back. But then, something shifted. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a slow creep, a tremor you'd feel, but couldn't quite place. Maybe you noticed the prime rib special was now $9.99 and not quite as good. Maybe the dealer seemed a little more rushed, his eyes flicking up to the pit boss more often. Maybe the drink service got a little slower if you were only betting the minimum. Little things. Cracks in the foundation of the promise. You'd shrug them off. Times change, right? Nothing stays the same. But then came the moment you couldn't shrug off. The moment the unspoken contract was torn up and replaced with fine print. For so many people I've talked to, that moment has a name. The resort fee. Remember the first time you saw it on your bill? You'd had your fun, you were checking out, ready to hit the road with those stories and that grin, and there it was. A line item. 20, maybe $30 a night for amenities. What amenities? The Wi-Fi that barely worked? Access to a gym you never planned on using? The right to use the phone in your room? It felt like a lie. It was the price on the billboard not being the real price. It was a handshake with a guy who was picking your pocket with his other hand. It wasn't about the money. Not really. Not at first. It was about the principle. It was the end of the square deal. It was the first, undeniable sign that the relationship had changed. You were no longer a guest. You were a data point. You were a walking wallet, and the new game was to figure out how to extract the maximum amount of revenue from you before you left the property. The resort fee was the beachhead, the first invasion from a different kind of army. This wasn't a decision made by some cigar-chomping casino boss who came up through the ranks. This was a decision made in a corporate boardroom 1,000 miles away, by guys with MBAs looking at spreadsheets. They didn't see Sal from Chicago. They saw average customer spend per visit. They didn't see the magic of a $20 bill feeling infinite. They saw an untapped revenue stream. And that little fee, that bit of accounting sleight of hand, that was the beginning of the end. It was the first shovel of dirt on the grave of cheap Vegas. Because once they realized they could get away with it, they started wondering, what else could they charge for? That resort fee. It was more than just a nuisance. It was a memo sent from a boardroom to the rest of us. And it said, loud and clear, the philosophy has changed. The old Vegas, the one that ran on handshakes and instinct, was being retired. A new Vegas was taking its place, one that ran on data, algorithms, and the cold, hard logic of a balance sheet. To really understand what happened, you have to talk to the people who weren't just visiting the machine, but who were cogs inside of it. People who had a front row seat to the soulectomy. I spent an evening talking to a woman named Maria. She's been dealing 21 on the Strip for 32 years. Same casino, different name. 3 times. When she started, she told me her job was 10% dealing cards and 90% being a host. She had regulars, people who would fly in from Milwaukee or Houston and come straight to her table. She knew their wives' names, knew when their kids were graduating. Her job was to be the friendly face of the house, to make them feel welcome, to make their little stake of cash last as long as possible. We were entertainers, she said, her hands resting on her kitchen table, still with the muscle memory of someone who has slid 1,000,000 cards across green felt. The whole point was to make him feel good. If a guy lost $100 but he laughed his ass off for 3 hours, he was coming back. That was the investment. Back then, there was a rhythm to the game. A human rhythm. There was discretion. If a loyal player was having a bad run, Maria could catch the pit boss's eye. A nod, a gesture. A few minutes later, a comp would appear, a ticket to the buffet, a voucher for the coffee shop. It wasn't about the monetary value. It was a gesture of goodwill. It was the house saying, hey, we know you're taking a beating. We appreciate your business. Stick around. The luck'll turn. It was a relationship. Now, Maria's job is 90% dealing cards and 10%, well, just dealing cards. The human element, she says, has been systematically engineered out of the equation. Her performance is no longer judged by the smiles at her table, but by metrics she sees on a printout every week. Hands per hour. That's a big one. Automatic shufflers were brought in not just for security, but to speed up the game. Less shuffling means more hands per hour. More hands per hour means the house edge grinds you down faster. There's pressure not to chat too much, not to tell too many jokes. It slows the pace. It hurts the metrics. The comp system isn't a nod from the pit boss anymore. It's a rigid, centralized algorithm. A player's worth is calculated in real time based on their theoretical loss. You have to earn that free drink now, by feeding a certain amount of money into a machine or betting at a certain level for a certain amount of time. The art of the gesture is gone, replaced by the science of the transaction. Maria doesn't see Sal from Chicago anymore. She sees a player card, a tier level, a blinking light on a screen that tells her if this person is worth a bottle of water. They traded soul for spreadsheets, she told me. Not with anger, but with a deep, quiet sadness. We used to be in the business of hospitality. Now, we're in the business of yield management. We're just trying to squeeze every last drop out of every single person who walks through that door. And that's the crux of it. That's the answer to the big question of why. This wasn't a gradual cultural shift. It was a hostile takeover. For decades, Vegas was run by, well, let's call them casino guys. Some were mobsters, some were entrepreneurs, but they all had sawdust in their veins. They understood the gambler's heart, the intoxicating dance of risk and reward. Their business was Las Vegas. Then Wall Street arrived. Hedge funds, private equity firms, publicly traded multinational corporations. They started buying up the legendary casinos, not as passion projects but as assets in a portfolio. And these new owners weren't casino guys. They were finance guys. They had MBAs from Harvard and Wharton. They didn't see a magical city in the desert. They saw an undervalued real estate market and inefficiently monetized foot traffic. Their loyalty wasn't to a legacy, or to a feeling, or to the city itself. It was to their shareholders. And the only thing shareholders care about is the quarterly earnings report. This was the MBA-ification of the American good time. Every single aspect of the Vegas experience was put under a microscope and analyzed for profitability. Every square foot of carpet had to justify its existence. The cheap buffet? That's a loss leader. Axe it. Replace it with a celebrity chef's restaurant where a steak costs $150. Free parking? That's prime real estate. Put up gates. Charge $30. The spectacular, free sidewalk shows? The maintenance costs are too high and they don't force people to spend money. Get rid of them or put them inside a ticketed venue. They perfected the science of taking your money, but they completely forgot the art of making you feel good about it. The charming inefficiencies, the human touches, the little gestures that made you feel like you were in on the secret, all of that was streamlined, optimized, and eliminated in the name of shareholder value. They figured out that they could charge 5-star prices for a 3-star room and call it a luxury experience. They realized they could shrink the portions, water down the drinks, tighten the slot machines, and people would still come, for a while at least, chasing the ghost of a memory. Chasing that old promise, the house always wins, but now it owns the whole damn street. It owns the parking garage. It owns the restaurant. It owns the theater. It owns the nightclub. And every single one of them is designed with the same ruthless efficiency to separate you from your money as quickly and completely as possible. The fun is still there, I guess, but it's no longer a happy accident you stumble upon. It's a scheduled, ticketed, and very, very expensive commodity. So, what do you get when you trade soul for spreadsheets? What is the final product of this MBA-ification of a good time? You get the New Vegas. And from a distance, it is a marvel. It's bigger, brighter, louder, and more dazzling than ever before. The architecture is breathtaking. The fountains are choreographed to perfection. The sheer scale of it all is designed to overwhelm your senses, to make you feel small and awestruck. But when you get closer, when you walk the floors and sit in the bars and feel the energy of the place, you notice the ghosts of what used to be. You feel it when you order a drink at a sleek casino bar and the bartender presents you with a $40 cocktail. It's a beautifully crafted thing, with artisanal bitters and a sprig of something exotic, served in a glass that probably cost more than your shirt. But it's $40, and in that moment, the question hangs in the air, unspoken. Who is this for? It's not for Sal, the pipefitter from Chicago. It's not for the young couple on their first big vacation, carefully counting their cash. It's for the guy with the corporate Amex, the bachelor party dropping 10 grand on bottle service, the Instagram model who isn't paying for it anyway. It's a velvet rope in liquid form. And then you walk the casino floor. You see the slot machines, these technological marvels with surround sound and high-definition screens, themed after every movie and television show imaginable. But you also see the empty chairs. So many empty chairs. You look for the table games, the heart of any real casino, the place where the human drama unfolds, and you can't find a $5 table. You can barely find a $15 table. They are islands of $25, $50, $100 a hand minimum. The message is clear. If you can't afford to lose serious money, we don't have a seat for you. This is the great, tragic paradox of the New Vegas. In its relentless, surgically precise pursuit of the high roller, it has priced out and alienated its own soul. It has systematically dismantled the ecosystem that made it a global phenomenon. I talked to a valet who's been parking cars on the Strip since the 90 seconds. He told me he doesn't even come to the Strip on his days off anymore. It's not our city, he said. It's a theme park for rich people. They fly in, they spend their money, they fly out. They have no connection to the place. For them, it could be Vegas or it could be Dubai. It doesn't matter. The spontaneous joy has been replaced by scheduled consumption. The possibility of a lucky run has been replaced by the certainty of an expensive bill. The democratic promise that anyone could have a seat at the table has been revoked. They've built a city that's forgotten how to have the kind of cheap, accessible, unpretentious fun that put it on the map. They're selling a memory, a brand, an idea of what Vegas was, but they're charging a premium for an experience that no longer exists. And as I walked through these gleaming, soulless cathedrals of commerce, I realized this story isn't really about Vegas at all. It couldn't be. Vegas has always been America, with the volume turned up. It's a mirror, reflecting our grandest ambitions and our deepest flaws. And what's happening there now is a reflection of a profound change in the American soul itself. The death of cheap Vegas is the story of the hollowing out of the American middle class. It's the story of a country where everything from housing to healthcare to higher education is becoming a luxury good. It's the story of the disappearance of the idea that a regular person, a working person, should have access to a decent, affordable life, or even just a decent, affordable weekend of escapism. Vegas used to be the American dream on a bender. It was the place you could go to feel like your hard work had paid off, even for just a little while. Now, it's just another place that reminds you of the widening gap between the wealthy and everyone else. What happened to Vegas is what's happening to our towns, our industries, our culture. The small, locally owned businesses are being devoured by massive, faceless corporations. The focus on community and long-term relationships is being replaced by a brutal focus on short-term profits and shareholder returns. The belief in a square deal is being eroded by endless fine print, hidden fees, and subscription models. They didn't just kill the 99-cent shrimp cocktail, they killed the philosophy behind it. The idea that some things should exist just to make people happy, to bring them in the door, to build goodwill. They killed it because goodwill doesn't show up on a quarterly earnings report. The new promise of Vegas is the new promise of America. Come and see the spectacular things you can have if you can afford them. And if you can't, well, thanks for your visit. Please exit through the gift shop. So, in the end, the story of Vegas is a ghost story. It's about a city haunted by the memory of a promise it no longer keeps. The promise that a good time wasn't a luxury item. The promise that anyone, from any walk of life, could pull up a seat and be treated like they belonged. That promise wasn't just good for business, it was good for the soul. It's what made the neon glow with something more than just gas and electricity. They didn't just raise the prices, they evicted the spirit of the place. They created a perfect, polished, and profitable machine that runs flawlessly but has no heartbeat. And maybe that's progress. Or maybe it's just a different kind of hustle, one that's less honest than the old ways. They're still selling the dream, of course. The dream is the brand, but it's a dream most of us can no longer afford to buy into. So you have to wonder, what happens when a city built on fantasy stops selling it to the people who need it the most? What's left when the last ghost of the $5 table finally fades away? If this story meant something to you, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What's your Vegas story? Subscribing lets us keep digging into the stories that matter. Thanks for listening.